Today we're going to be talking about how to engineer success in your brand community. So David was actually supposed to be joining us. David, the CEO of CMX, he is horribly ill, so send him all of your best wishes for a speedy recovery. But he'll be missed, and he's still here in spirit because he's still on the title slide, basically. So yes, welcome. Happy Wednesday. Middle of the week, we got lots of time. I'm really excited that you're here, setting aside a little bit of time for your own career, your own community, to make yourself stronger and feel more empowered in your role. So just to tell you a little bit of a story, a backstory about, where I'm coming from in this. Actually, a couple years ago, before CMX existed, I worked for a company and I worked under a marketing department. And I think there were about 6 team members, and every single one on the team had measurable goals and objectives that tied back to this beautiful, larger business picture. And I, the lone community manager, had no goals. And I, looked around, I asked my compatriots in community building, is this common? Is this something that you're seeing too? And like resoundingly, people said, yeah, I don't have measurable goals either. I'm unsure what my value is. I'm unsure how to prove that I am successful. So it's incredibly common. And not only that, but we did research this year that actually showed the data about it. And, I want to change this picture for community managers and help them understand how to strategically engineer their own success in their communities. So this is going to be all about how to be a change maker in your organization, how to build a business case, how to get people on your side, how to influence without authority. And today we're going to be talking with somebody who's been there and done that, and that's Susie Nelson, a digital marketer. Hi, Susie.
Hello.
So incredibly excited to bring someone on who has, firsthand experience doing this, has built excitement in her company for what community can be, and who is working really hard to carve out what community's value is and put some metrics behind it, because that's important. So some logistical notes here. We will be recording this and we'll be sharing out the recording via email afterwards. Also save I should say that you can ask questions at any point during the webinar, and there's a little Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen if you scroll down, or if you're on Facebook Live, you can just type questions as we go. And at the very end, we will take questions from the audience. So that'll be about 20 minutes of Q&A at the very end. And that will be, you can ask Susie questions, you can ask me questions, and we'll just get interactive with it. If you want to be on video as well, you can raise your hand and we can promote you to become a panelist and we can see your face like you're here in person. So really quickly, what is CMX? We are the hub for the community profession. We have a Facebook group of now nearly 6,000 community managers all over the world. We provide content and training for community managers and especially community teams. And we do CMX Summit, which is a huge conference this year in Los Angeles, California. It's going to bring together anyone who's passionate about community and collaboration. So if you are interested in those things, or you have teammates who are, or peers, please come see us in Los Angeles. We're so excited. And what is Digital Marketer, where Susie works? Digital Marketer is an education and training company that aims to double the size of 10,000 businesses in the next 5 years. And it's so funny, Susie, I asked you for like a short, like, what is Digital Marketer? And you sent me this, and it's amazing how like really the mission of the company is actually baked into what the company even is. I think that really goes back to, who are we serving? And it shows that the community really is central and core to the business. And I think that's probably something that's been shaped over time and has evolved. So that's
definitely.
I love it. So yeah, let's dive right in. So just a quick intro about me. I am Carrie Melissa Jones. I am founding partner and COO at CMX. I'm deeply passionate about helping community managers who are excited about the engagement piece of community building and building out programs, connecting them back to what is their larger vision, what is the business impact of what they're doing. So that's what I'm focused on a regular basis at CMX. And Susie?
So I'm the community manager over at Digital Marketer, and I've been there for nearly 3 years. It'll be 3 years in December, and this is my first community role. So that's exciting.
And you're rocking it. She's also, I should mention, she is the Community Manager of the Year 2017, and that was, she was nominated by many, many people, and she's just really, really rocking it in this role. So yay!
Oh, thanks.
All right. So what are we going to cover today? What's on the agenda? So we're first going to talk about the research really briefly, which is going to provide the backbone for really what we're talking about when we're talking about really carefully constructing a business case. Then we're going to share with you what 84% of community managers are doing wrong and what you can do to be right. And then we're going to talk about how to build your business case, and then how to get the vital internal support that you need to be successful. Then I'm gonna have a couple questions for Susie, and then we're gonna open the floor in the last 20 minutes. So if you have questions, like I said, Q&A section or on Facebook Live, definitely send us lots of questions and good vibes. So let's talk about the research a little bit. In 2016, we actually put out a survey, and we got 533 total marketers as well as community professionals to give us information about how they're showing their value and what metrics they're looking at in their communities. So just to give you a quick snapshot of the demographics, about 2/3 of our respondents came from companies with fewer than 200 employees, and then 1/3 came from larger enterprises. And there's a pretty wide spread of what industries people work in, with a large emphasis on technology, which not super surprising that tech has caught on to the trend of community building early on, and many other industries are catching up now. So yes, just to give you an overview of where this data came from, and we're not just making this up. We've heard from hundreds and hundreds of people what makes them successful and what is really frustrating to them as well. So why did we embark on this journey? Because I will tell you that it was not easy to do this research and write this report. First of all, we needed benchmarks to share widely how people are proving their value today, so that we can say, you know, a year from now, what does that look like? 2 years from now, what does that look like? We also know that data is powerful, both for you, so that you can share these data points back with your team to say, like, we're going to launch a community, and I now know what other people are doing to make themselves successful. I now know what our metrics, our dashboards should look like, things like that, how often I should be reporting. And also from CMX's perspective, I will say that putting out this research really put us on the map with some very important industry partners. Just to be transparent about it, we're working now with companies that have a lot of influence, and because of that, we'll be able to really spread the influence of community from a larger perspective beyond just our own inner circle, which, like, we're preaching to the choir sometimes about community's value. Like, we all know that it's important, but now we're talking with some industry partners as a result of this really hard work that we did. So it's really exciting, and I can't wait to see the ripple effects that it has for years to come. So enough about that. Prepare your mind to be blown. I'm really cheesy. So this is what 84% of community builders are doing wrong. So 84% of communities do not determine their metrics before they launch. This isn't always the worst thing. We've actually talked with the Community Roundtable. We've talked with Loyal, Sarah Judd Welch, some other industry partners, and we agree it's not always a bad thing not to have your metrics decided. But what this is pointing to is a larger misunderstanding of how community can actually be measured. And if you're not measuring something and not having an active goal around it, how can you prove that it's actually effective? So just by comparison, this is an interesting point that CMX's Erica McGillivray actually shared with us. She went to a content marketing conference a couple months ago and spoke, and she found there that about 20% of content marketers, so content strategists, 20% do decide their metrics pre-launch. So we're actually a little bit close to that in some ways. It's not uncommon for people to think, like, this is the right thing to do, and we know that this is going to be an interesting strategy. Let's try it and then determine metrics later on. So it's not the worst red flag in the world, but the important thing is not to have it all figured out, but rather to have your larger business value in mind that you're going to drive, and then use that to sell the value of what you're doing. Because, you know, maybe don't have metrics right at launch, but if you still don't have them 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, that is definitely a red flag, because you're consistently going to be asking for resources. So some data to help you understand this: about 44% of respondents do have their metrics determined at least 6 months post-launch. So the number skyrockets at that point, and that's very helpful. But 13% of respondents felt very confident. So that's a very small portion that they felt very confident that they were measuring the right things. But again, it's not important necessarily that you have the perfect metrics. What's important is that you have some benchmarks to work from. So just with this in mind, there's a ton of unrealized potential. If you can set metrics pre-launch, you already have a competitive advantage over a huge portion of community builders and your competitors, honestly. So the time to set these metrics is now. It's not too late. You can do it today. And really, to be a change maker in your organization, it's your job alongside your executive team to carve these things out. Nobody's going to do it for you if they haven't already. So if you want to be the change maker, you're going to have to lead the charge on this. And we're going to give you the tools to do that. And I'm thrilled that we can. So how to build your business case. So a lot of people ask us about this, what kind of document do I create? What do I even need to include in a business case? How do I get executives to read this thing? How do I speak the business language? So we created the CMX Community Strategy Canvas. This is part of our online training program that we teach. But basically, your business case has 3 essential pieces to it. And the first one that is most important in getting buy-in and in gathering influence in your organization is alignment. So alignment includes your business alignment. Where is community going to sit in your company? What is your larger company's vision, mission, and values? And how can you tie community back to that in a core way, right? So it can't just be something that is tagged on forever. So getting that piece out of the way initially is so key, because it's the bedrock of everything else that you have to decide when you're building your business case. The second piece is member alignment. So doing your user research, understanding your customers and who might actually be part of your community. The third piece is about positioning. So essentially, like, if you're thinking about this as a Venn diagram with business needs on one side and member needs on the other, where are you going to be positioning your community within that? What is your community's value proposition? So getting all of that high-level visioning out of the way first and foremost is essential, because then everything else that you try to decide in the development and management phases becomes a lot more clear, because you have this North Star essentially. So just to really quickly go over the other pieces, the experience piece is all about, if your business goals are XYZ and your member goals are XYZ, how do you actually envision the experience of people becoming more and more engaged over time in your community? And there's actually a way that you can break this down. We have models for this, the community engagement cycle. You can read about that on CMX. I have a little URL here if you really want to deep dive into this. And then secondly, deciding your content and programming. So with this experience in mind, with all your business goals in mind, everything that you need there, what kind of content and programming will you actually be doing? Will it be offline events? Will it be an online forum? Will it be a Facebook group? So don't just decide that first and foremost. Get these larger decisions made before you just randomly start throwing spaghetti at the wall. I use that metaphor all the time. And then importantly here is measurement. And measurement is how you tie this development piece back to your business alignment. It's essentially figuring out what actual metrics are going to point back to that business value that you're driving. Your measurement shouldn't be decided without that in mind. And then finally, your management piece. So that includes, like, who's going to be on your community team? Maybe it's just you. How do you communicate your metrics back to the team? What are your dashboards? What kind of reports are you putting together regularly? And then finally, what's your budget? So you're probably not going to be able to get any of that management piece and any of the resources you need until you've done the alignment and the development work, because nobody's going to just give you $200,000 to invest in a community platform until you've decided all these other things. So essentially, you build a business case by filling this canvas out and putting it in whatever format works in your company. So maybe you can just share this canvas out, and maybe you have to create a formal document and have a formal executive meeting and all that. But this is how you have to have all these questions essentially answered in order to build your business case. And again, if you want to deep dive into this, check out that link there. And also, I'm happy to answer questions about that as well in the Q&A. So we're going to talk about measurement a little bit more. So essentially there are 3 types of metrics for community building. The first are content and programming metrics. And I mention this because not everyone needs to know every metric. Not everyone in your organization is going to care about every type of metric. But your content and programming metrics oftentimes are these sort of vanity metrics like, we published 6 blog posts this week about the community and it generated X number of page views. Like, that's great, but it doesn't actually show any real value coming out of it, unless growth for growth's sake is for some reason important for your business, but that's really going to depend on your specific team. But generally, these are going to be internal benchmarks of how productive have I been this week, this month, this quarter. The second type are engagement metrics, and these are often equated with community health metrics. So how often are people signing in? How many active members do we have? Is our community growing over time? Is it shrinking? And if so, why? So again, your entire organization might actually not care about this. I know that's a hard pill to swallow because as community builders, of course, we care that people are engaging with each other, and 50 people showed up to our latest meetup and all that great stuff, and things are active. I certainly get excited about those things, but the honest truth is that what most executives will care about when you bring your community to them is the business value metrics. So if you've done your homework and you've determined how your community is aligned with your business needs, this will be fairly easy, not necessarily to compute, but easy for you to say that our community engagement is actually having an impact on our business. If you haven't done that work, then you're probably going to just be sharing these engagement metrics, and they're going to be falling on dead ears. And I will say that I shared in the beginning of this webinar that when I was working in a marketing organization, I didn't have goals, but I would share these engagement level metrics. And I remember the founder being very excited about them, but also not knowing what to do with them. And he was like, "What do impressions mean?" So he was constantly asking, what does this have to do with the business? And getting that clarified was really, really important. So how do you get people that matter to care? And I don't mean like executives all the time. It's just the people that can actually affect change in your organization. How do you get them to care and to show up and to invest in your community building efforts? So first I want to share that we share this statistic all the time because it's so, so key to keep in mind. 30% of communities that fail because they don't have internal resources and support. So it's incredibly important that you get these people to care, because getting those resources and support is what will keep you from failing. So one of the fastest ways that you can get visibility for your community building efforts is to hold stakeholder meetings. Now, let's put that in a little bit of context. So Amanda Swan, she works at Optimizely, and she was part of their entire redesign of their community platform. And she really led the charge on completely re-envisioning what community was going to be for Optimizely. So she said in an interview with CMX, make sure you get the right people in the room right off the bat. You want the people who actually have a stake in the project to help you set the goals. So the people who actually have a stake in the project are your stakeholders. So, who's going to be affected by community in your organization? Who is going to care beyond just you and your team? Getting those people in the room, having a conversation together, and building consensus is how you create influence without necessarily having an executive title. And that is how you move up the career ladder, incidentally. So strange how that works. So how do you actually get people to care? There are 4 things that you can do. First of all, figure out what's in it for them and make that part of any meeting or conversation that you have with them. It can't be all about you and what your community is doing. It's about, why would this VP of product care that we have 200 insane evangelists in a group together who are sharing ideas for the product and like identifying bugs at an incredibly fast pace? Why would she care? And then put it in those terms for her. And then it becomes like that person then becomes the hero if they invest in community, because they can say, we're able to like 10x product growth or 10x adoption of a new feature. And then they become the hero. So being a community manager is often about passing on credit and, making other people feel like they're the heroes in the situation. But at the end of the day, like, you're the one who actually affected this change and you're actually the hero. So that's always good to keep in mind. Second, clarify your purpose for any meeting or conversation that you have. So is it to get buy-in? Is it about rallying excitement? Is it just about gathering consensus? Never hold a meeting, especially with anybody, but especially with people whose calendars are like completely time blocked, without having a clear purpose in mind. Just don't do that. It's not gonna go well. I've done it and I don't recommend it. Third, you can bring in outside expertise. So this is something that if you can afford it, to bring in a third party who is impartial, it can just completely change the game, because they can see outside of your blind spots and they can mediate a conversation where everyone feels involved, engaged, and understands what's in it for them. And then that person can synthesize all that information and help you roll out this buy-in process. So that can be extremely powerful. And fourth, have clear goals for each meeting. So setting KPIs might be one of your goals, maybe setting an overall vision, getting that business alignment piece decided in a meeting, and deciding how you're going to decide that is also important. So is it like, majority rules? Is it one person has the most power in that situation? Understanding all of that is really important. And goals are a little bit different than purpose, because goals are about, what are you actually going to walk away from this meeting? What is the concrete thing? Essentially like a SMART goal. The purpose is much more about like, why are we here? This big picture kind of thing. So a great thing to decide during one of these meetings is getting that business alignment piece out of the way. And we talk about the SPACE model and using that to do this. So basically, I'm not going to go over this in depth in any way here, because I've shared it so many times and I'm sure people have seen it before. So I just included a link to the SPACE model. You can read more about it. And we talk about this in our online training as well. But essentially, the SPACE model is a way to succinctly understand how community can drive value in your business. So if your team hasn't seen this before, this can often generate the aha moment that you need in order to get everyone aligned and understand, like, what is the one thing we're all working toward here together. And this is about high-level business goals, not necessarily about community goals. So deciding, where you're going to sit in the SPACE model, and then diverting your resources in your community toward accomplishing those goals. That can be extremely powerful. And to give you sort of the lay of the land from our research, this is sort of how people are generating value today with their communities, the most important value that their community drives in their organizations. So we found in our research that 26% of our respondents said that customer support or success was the most important thing that community was driving for their business, followed by acquisition and advocacy. That can be things like ambassador programs, advocacy programs, referral programs, things like that. And then followed by external engagement. So that's often like a forum or a special interest group where people can gather to talk about something peripheral to the product. And then there was actually a tie between product ideation, innovation, and feedback driving communities and content and programming communities. I think the product one is fairly self-explanatory. It can be things like data feedback groups. It can be like product ideation, focus groups, things like that. The content and programming is where the community is in of itself valuable to the business. So the most common example that I use is Airbnb, where making that community healthy and engaged actually makes the business healthier. So that's where community is actually central to everything that the business does. And then we had a smaller spread of people doing internal engagement communities. So these are usually like employee programs inside of a company, usually sitting in an HR department or something like that. And then we had another group. There was no major trends there. But one very good thing that came out of this data was understanding that only 1% were not sure what business value their community drives. So when we put this model in front of people, people could actually identify, here's where I sit, like, finally I have a word for it, or I know like I have other people that are doing this as well. So that's really great. And just make sure that your team also thinks that that's what value your community is driving. Because oftentimes you haven't had that conversation yet, and that's okay. But getting that shared consensus there in a stakeholder meeting is really, really important. So why does any of this actually matter? So as I said in the beginning, about 30% of communities that fail due to lack of internal resources and support. So measuring, when we asked this year what effect measuring community had on these community managers' teams, 93% said that measuring their community's value led to increased interest from other departments, and 90% reported that they saw increased leadership support. So that's exactly what we needed to hear, basically, to show that when you actually start to measure and build your business case and get clarity, you get the internal support that you need to actually be successful. So there's a clear pathway here, from starting a community to measuring it, to getting all this buy-in, to actually getting the support you need, and then avoiding a negative fate. So we just want to set you on that journey and make sure that you're successful. And with that, we're going to talk with somebody who's done this. And what I really love about Susie's story is that it's actually very organic. The way that I've described all of this is very like process and systems, and maybe that's how my brain works a little bit. But I love the way that you've done it, because it's just been like this natural sort of evangelizing that you've done that has really made community so central in your business. So, I mean, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your community and some of the programs that you run at Digital Marketer?
Sure. So, hold on one second. There's like feedback happening.
Oh no, maybe I can mute myself.
Okay, that works. Digital Marketer, we have memberships that are part of our product. So they're monthly memberships that people pay that get them access to, things like trainings and certifications and things like that. And some of these products have communities tied to them. So whenever you purchase Digital Marketer Lab, for example, you get access to a private Facebook group. That's where our communities are housed. So whenever they purchase this product, they are added to this Facebook group that's only for lab members, and we actually remove them from the community when they cancel their membership. So we use this specifically as a retention move. So it's things like reducing churn, making sure people are getting a lot of value, and we found that people even tell us that they'll pay their membership even when they're not consuming the product, just so they can stay in the community. So it's a really, really powerful addition to those products that we sell. So that's kind of our communities in a nutshell.
Awesome. So, and you said it's in a Facebook group?
That's yes, right. It's a private Facebook group. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, what is your team like at Digital Marketer? I know that you've said it's grown a lot in the last couple of years that you've been there. How has it changed over time, and what is it like today?
Yeah, when I first started, I don't even know how many people were here actually in the office. It was maybe less than 20. And we've actually hired 20 more people in the last, 6 months to a year. So our team has definitely grown by leaps and bounds very, very recently. So it was cool to start at the beginning whenever it was like everybody is just all hands on deck. And now we have actual like teams and growing teams and expanding teams. So it's really exciting, and we all are still very much supporting each other in that kind of startup feel. So it's a great place.
That's awesome. And your community team, I mean, it started with just you.
Yes.
Has that changed over time?
Yes, so it was just me until, oh, I'm horrible with the dates. It could have been yesterday, it could have been 3 or 4 months ago. We hired another person to help me on the community team. So she does other things and she kind of does community part-time and helps me out, which has been just a game changer. It frees up so much of my time to focus on other things to do with community, which has never happened before. So it's really exciting. And her name's Jenna and she's awesome.
Hey, Jenna. Yay for delegation.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, so when you first started, did you have metrics in place before you launched this community? I mean, how did all of that work for you?
Absolutely not. So, which I'm sure is a lot of people's same
Yeah.
story here. Whenever I was hired, I was actually a part of the customer care team, and community was a part-time position, kind of. It was like, okay, you're going to spend half your time answering tickets and half your time in this Facebook group. And when I got hired, literally, they were like, your job is just answer questions on Facebook, and that's kind of the whole thing. So that's how it started. There weren't really any metrics in place. For one thing, it was a Facebook group, so we didn't really have a way to, effectively measure anything. So it was very much just kind of, here you go, and figuring out a way to make it work, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's very common. I mean, as we saw from the data as well, so many people are not having metrics in place pre-launch, but the fact that you're able to, turn that around and create some metrics, I think is really important. And one thing I mentioned at the very beginning was, nobody's going to do this for you. You have to do it for yourself. So, I mean, you really were that change maker where you were. I mean, you said you found Grytics, right, to help you start
Right.
measuring some of this stuff happening in the Facebook group. So can you tell us a little bit about like how you found Grytics and how that kind of changed the game for you?
Well, even before Grytics happened, I was probably community manager for a good year, maybe a year and a half before that tool even came along. And before that, I knew that retention was really important. So it was, what could I figure out that would show people are getting value out of this group, so that in a roundabout way will kind of show that they are not refunding and not that it's affecting churn. And so what I would do is I would find stories, like posts that people make whenever they're sharing their experiences and sharing how much that they loved being a part of the group. People would actually post things like that. So I would be sure to screenshot that, send that to my boss, have a conversation about it. And then when I found Grytics, it just like was, I told you before, I literally danced around the office. Our VP of marketing actually found that and found that resource and sent it over to me. So we're able to, dive in a lot more into actual data. We don't have it linked up with our CRM yet, which is a shame, but we are able to show that people are getting value, which in turn leads to providing that business value. CEOs don't care about anything unless it links back to reducing cost or increasing revenue. And if you can show that through, like they don't care. They just don't, they might think that you're doing a great job, but they're just not going to care from a business sense. And you're not going to get that investment if you can't prove it. So as long as you can tie things back to reducing cost, increasing revenue, even if it's like storytelling and anecdotal and providing a narrative, that can go so far into getting people excited about the work that you're doing in your communities.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned like you took screenshots and you shared stories in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that how you got people excited and got people bought into why community mattered in the organization, was just sharing stories?
From the beginning, yeah, at the beginning, definitely. It's just, opening up to conversation like, hey, isn't this cool? This happened. And now this person, you might even have to do a little bit of connecting the dots for people. I'm just imagining like if you have a supervisor or a boss who just, you might need to connect the dots a little bit like, hey, this person had a really great experience in this community. They posted a testimonial about it. And then connecting those dots with like, hey, that means they're probably not going to refund anytime soon, because in our case, they'll actually be removed from the community if they're getting value out of it. There's no reason why they would want to do that per se. So it just helps people like connect the dots to what the business value that you're trying to do, how your community is actually reaching it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, one thing I noticed when we did the actual Community Manager of the Year awards is that you had so many of your team members who actually joined the ceremony on Zoom, which was like really heartening and amazing to see. So, I mean, I guess like, how do you identify a great team? Is there a way to like take a team who's kind of like lackluster and not excited and make them excited? Or is that just sort of like, you've got to have the right team and identify them from the start?
I think a big part of it is just having the right team for sure. I mean, that has made all the difference in the world. Now, granted, I haven't worked in community in another company, so I just have like this great, awesome experience. But I think just making sure that that dialogue is always open, that you're always telling stories about how community is affecting the business as a whole, because if your team members are passionate about the health of your business, they're going to be passionate about anything that makes that better. I know, like, once I showed the value of, once people understand the value of our Facebook groups, I've had people from our development team come up to me and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we leverage this for product ideation? Or wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And that's just amazing. Like, once they can see the value, you might have people even coming up with their own ideas on how the community can help with their teams as well. And I mean, don't wait for people to come up to you. You can set those meetings yourself. I mean, you don't have to wait for people to approach you with those ideas. But I think that once, like, especially when the, C-level directors are on board, it just kind of trickles down. I mean, there's nobody at my company who doesn't know what DM Engage is. That's the name of our community. We talk about it in regular conversation. We're always, like our customer care team, if they come across a customer, they can say, hey, is this a member of DM Engage? Like, people in our company know what that word is and they know what it means. So I think that goes really far into getting that, colleague buy-in as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I found speaking with like Erica Cool at Salesforce, who's now the VP of Community for all of Salesforce.
That's awesome.
I asked her, like, how do you get people to care? And she just said, like, I just kept pushing them. Like,
yeah.
And
keep talking about it.
Yeah, sometimes the ROI is not super crisp and clear, or it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? Causation, it's correlation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can still be how you start that conversation. One question I'm seeing come up a lot in the chat, which I'll just ask now, is like, how do you get to business value with connecting to sales, like in a CRM, Dirk said, and then connected to that, if you're not connected to a CRM, how do you determine the ROI of your community? Is that something that has to get like super detailed in your company, or?
Yeah, it's not our, when people buy a membership, they are tagged in our CRM, but we don't really have a good way of tagging them that they're also a part of our community. So right now it's kind of abstract. Like, I can take like the number of lab members we have and the number of people in our community, and I can look at that conversion rate. And then I can look at like active members and look at that conversion rate. And then it's just storytelling from then on out. So it's very, you kind of have to be creative. But like I said, if you can link it back to the main business goal. So our main business goal is, my CEO calls it decommoditizing a commodity. So once people consume our product, they have a good chance of, canceling if they don't consume more of it, unless they're a part of this community. It gives them a reason when they're like in between consumption of the product. So it gives them a reason to stay. So if I can prove that like that our community is really active, people are asking good questions, they're getting a lot of value, I can tie that back to retention in kind of a narrative sort of way. So it's not, I wish that I could put hard numbers on it right now. It's just not possible. It's kind of a limitation of the platform, but there's still ways that you can prove value, even if you can't put an actual like dollar sign on all of your members.
Right. And I mean, is that something that you would want to work toward in the next few years, especially, I mean,
oh yeah,
a lot of companies have like BI analysts and stuff that they work with, or like their platform will show them certain things and then they have to kind of do some SQL queries to find the rest.
Jerry rig it. I would absolutely love like any kind of hard data I can, but I would never stop doing the storytelling aspect.
Yeah.
That would be in addition to, not a replacement of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, data without a story for most people is useless.
Yeah.
um, unless you have like a data scientist on your team who just looks at numbers and they make sense to them.
Oh, I just remembered something. Speaking of always getting your community out there, sometimes I do this thing where I find, so our company goal is to double the size of 10,000 businesses in the next 5 years. So all the work that we're doing is geared toward that. So whenever I find posts that people make in our community that say, you've doubled my business, I will take a screenshot of that and post it in our Slack channel for all of our, all of my team members to see. So that also just keeps the conversation, keeps the community top of mind, and lets them know that people are actually getting value out of the work that everyone else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about like looking at conversions and things like that. What are some of the metrics that you're looking at regularly within Grytics and then outside of it when you're doing your own data diving?
A lot of the day-to-day measurement is a lot of those engagement metrics you were talking about. So it's activity levels. We measure the types of questions that people ask, but I think we're actually tweaking that a little bit. I think we just said it yesterday, where we're now marking things open and closed instead of categorizing the types of content that people are posting, because it's just not changing. So now we're marking them open and closed so we can provide even more value, making sure that all those loops are closed, everybody's getting all the help that we can possibly give them. We can save things to follow up with later. We just thought that that was a better use of our time. We also measure how many people, we just started measuring how many people comment on our welcome posts. So that is kind of like our jerry-rigged way of measuring new contributions, not just new members. In fact, we don't really measure new members in like a way that informs any kind of community strategy, because I'm lucky enough to have a marketing team that, if they sell the product, they sell the community at the same time. So I don't really have to worry about acquisition, but what we worry about as community managers is, getting those new people plugged in, measuring that, making sure everyone's happy. What else do? We measure unanswered posts. Conversation is a really, really big metric for us because we need people to get just as much value as they possibly can. So every day we check posts from the day before. We find ones that have 0 comments. We give them a little love, get that conversation going. So everything that we do is all tied back to this bigger goal of retention and making sure that people are getting the value. So I could report to our company about how many unanswered posts are going on, but really like the meat of it is people are getting value and they're going to stick around for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to like your engagement metrics versus your business value metrics, or even like content and programming metrics where you're saying like, we're posting this many posts per week and we're getting this many responses. Right. Like for the most part, people won't care about that. They just
and I hardly ever measure that. And the only post that I really take a look at is the welcome post, because it's so important that new members, get plugged in right away. And if I try a new thing in the community and nobody responds, I know not to try that thing anymore. But it's not like hardcore, we're counting every single comment on posts that staff makes or anything like that. It's just kind of, getting a feel for how people are responding to things.
Yeah, totally. So I'll ask my last question here, and then we have a couple questions from the community, and I'll check the Facebook group as well. But what advice would you give to a community builder today who's struggling to get buy-in at their company, and especially if their team seems indifferent to their work? What would you tell them?
Get excited, get passionate, and get it straight in your own head first. If you can't, tell yourself the business value and the community value in your own head, and if you can't like explain it to your grandma in a way that makes sense to her, because that's an exercise that I do a lot. It's not like you're not ever going to get buy-in from people above you if you don't believe it yourself, if you can't prove it yourself. So really take the time to really, really think through it and get on board with it, get passionate about it yourself, and people are going to see that. It's not just all the passion, but I mean, like if you are 100% confident in, the ROI and how to measure it, and look at all the cool things that are happening in this community that affect the business as a whole, people are going to get on board with that. So get it straight in your own head first. Don't wait for somebody else to figure this out for you, because that's not going to happen. And just take initiative over that community and test things. It doesn't have to be completely hashed out from day one. If there's no plan, make a plan and then adjust from there. So that's the best advice I can give, is just try something, get on board, get passionate about it, and other people will respond to that.
Awesome. All right, so let's go to see questions here in the Q&A section. So Anne Bercia asked, why are the other 70% of communities failing? That is a great question. And if you actually check out our research project from 2016, I don't remember if it's called the Community Readiness and Growth Report. I believe I might have mixed up some of those word orders or whatever. But if you search on CMX Hub for like CMX Community Readiness and Growth, you'll find that report, and we actually outline the exact reasons why those other communities fail. I don't know them off the top of my head, unfortunately. I wish that I was a human encyclopedia. So excellent. So Melissa asked, looks actually like we got that one answered. Somebody was asking about Grytics. What is it called? I guess it's a hard word to phonetically understand the spelling of.
Grytics.
Yes, for those of you not watching live, that's that. Cool. And Anne also asked, does Suzy connect activity levels, conversations in the Facebook group to larger business metrics? Is there a goal there? I think you touched on that a little bit, but if you want to just talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, when we originally started categorizing all of our posts, you can like tag them inside of Grytics, and it just shoots them off to like a special place where you can see them all. We would tag things like, okay, this is a question, like our group is peer-to-peer support. So it's, you know, people asking questions about digital marketing and then other members weighing in. We'll jump in there and point them to resources and things like that. It's kind of like a CMX, but for like digital marketers. So it was really, really important that every post got answers. So we used to measure like the types, like, okay, this is a question, this is a testimonial, this is a win, this is a general, this is a, and we had all these different types of posts. Well, we would use that, my thinking was using that long term. So if we ever wanted to influence, you know, make the number of customer support requests go down or things like that, we had data to back it up and affect that change. It just took a lot of time, and I think we recently just changed that. I would love to do both, but you know, you got to work with what you got. So we decided to move to more marking things open and closed, so we could provide more value instead of measuring things over time, if that makes sense. So we're placing a big emphasis on immediate community value, because that's going to play out more, a better use of our time long term. As far as community strategy goes, to just make sure people are getting as much value as they possibly can, instead of using that information for us on the back end to maybe affect change later if we wanted to, if that makes sense.
I think so. If anybody wants to follow up on any questions with that, feel free in both the Facebook Live or in here in the Q&A. But we have another question from Maria Cristina. Do you have examples of metrics for community that should support the conversion process? How to prove that the community, like how do you prove that the community move people down the funnel when in the end the conversion might be made by the salesperson?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Yeah. I think a lot of that is going to be CRM related if you can. So you're talking about tracking someone through the customer journey, someone who started in the community and then the sale ended up with the sales team. Mm-hmm. If I'm getting that right.
Yeah, in the funnel.
Man, that's going to be difficult to track if your platform doesn't support that. I mean, specifically track if your platform doesn't support, you know, your CRM or things like that, because you would have to be able to somehow flag those accounts, and it's very technical and it's getting out of my area of expertise. I would just say, if you don't have that, storytelling is your best bet. I mean, if somebody moves through your community, purchases your product from the sales team, comes back to your community and starts, you know, leaving things like testimonials, that would be a narrative that you could point to. That's what I would do. And I would also say that it's going to be really, really hard if you have something like an open community that's not, you know, at the middle or the end of this customer journey. You're going to have a real hard time moving someone all the way through that just from community. So I would think more about what area of this journey is your community serving? I mean, if you're just trying to make people aware of your brand and you're measuring, you know, big purchases, you're going to have a hard time and you're going to think that your community is failing because you're just measuring the wrong thing. That's going to be all about, you know, like volume of people, and it gets complicated from there on out. But just make sure you're measuring the right thing and look for those stories. I mean, that's made all the difference, I think. And as I was, you know, researching, diving more into community management, taking trainings and things like that, I would learn things and I would immediately have a conversation with my boss about it and be like, hey, I just learned about this thing called self-disclosure. Look, here's an example from our community. This stuff works. Get excited. And he would, you know, we'd have conversations about that and get the conversation going about community that had absolutely never happened before. So those narratives and just sharing, you know, what you're learning is going to do wonders for you.
Yeah, I will say, just to add to this from my own experience, I've worked on teams where there is an interesting dynamic about like who owns the leads, or like who owns like having affected these metrics. And that is actually a cultural problem in your company, where it's like you're not working as a team, you're working as individuals. Yeah. And so if you're having to fight to say like, I definitely am responsible for this person's like point in this part of the sales journey, like I would encourage you to get out of that and think like, how can the whole team be successful?
That's golden advice.
Actually in the sale, right? Mm-hmm. And so did you take part in that? Yes. Why does it matter who takes credit for it? I mean, unless again, your company is like, your ideas are constantly being taken from you and you're not getting credit, which happens a lot. But yeah, you're a team. So approach it as a team. And it's not always so pivotal that you have the exact like attribution.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to tie it back to, is like, is that an important metric to measure? And that just depends on what kind of community you have, what the business goal of the community is.
Yeah.
If that's an important metric to track, I'm gonna lean toward probably not. You're just trying to foster a community of people, and then, you know, a certain percentage of them are going to go to the sales team, and that's exciting. Yeah. But it's not necessarily something that should be a pivotal metric for your community.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I'll say too is if you can't get super specific about it, I mean, literally what we do with CMX is we have like some internally created CRM sheet basically that we have. And so we can say like, is somebody a member of the Facebook group? Is somebody also somebody who's taken our training? And so we look at that as a sale essentially. So like, it doesn't matter just for the ease of getting started. This will obviously get more sophisticated over time. But I don't really care like when exactly they found the Facebook group and all that. I think we definitely will get that granular down the line, but just to get started, it's like, they're a community member and they're a sale in this way or in this way. So they have multiple touch points with us. All of them have made them get to this point. And so all of them are significant. And yeah, if you have a BI analyst on your team, or if you know how to do data analysis, you could look at like, what is the average time from group membership to sale or something like that. But I would say if you're getting started, that's not always the most significant thing. But that was a really good question. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Any other questions here? We've got Frank is asking, can you give an example of your storytelling in relaying your successes and why it resonated with your business leaders? That's a really good question too.
That is a really good question. Let me think of a specific example. I mentioned this way earlier, but like when people go into our community and they're like, I would gladly pay the $38.60. That's how much our membership is. They're like, I would gladly pay the $38.60 a month just to stay in this community. Like they're admitting they're not even consuming the product there, which would be great if they did, but we can ease back into that process. But like, you know, whenever I'm not consuming the product, I stay a member because I'm here. Like that is a story. Like that is, you were talking about making someone else the hero. Like your customers, like whatever your service is just a vehicle, and your customers are the one who put the gas in it and make it go. So telling that story to your directors, to your team members, telling that story that like, look what this person did, look how much value they're getting out of it, make them the hero, or even make your team members the hero. If you have a dev team, if you have a development team, a tech team, if they're anything like ours, they probably don't get a whole lot of like public love from your customers. Nobody really emails into customer care and is like, oh my gosh, this website is so beautiful, or I can't believe, like, this image that you made is just great. Well, those conversations happen in our community, and it's so easy to just take a screenshot of that and send it to your dev team and be like, hey, this person really loves this site redesign. They were bragging on you. They told everybody how much they loved it, because it's a group of their peers. It's just a different vibe. We've had our graphic designers start to make like branded content for our community. So whenever we because it's on Facebook, we're like, have competition with everything else in the world whenever people are on Facebook. So we started making these moving GIFs that were branded. And every time people see that, they know that that's from the community, and they are more likely to jump in. But they've started to talk about those images, and they're like, man, how do you make these images? They look so great. And that's something that I will send to our graphic designers, because they usually don't hear that from people who are actually consuming the content. So those are different ways to tell stories and to make other people the hero, and like, look how much people love you, and look what good things they're saying. And that's like to team members who usually don't get that public praise that often. So that can make a real difference in, for one, making them aware of the community in the first place, but just keeping all that conversation top of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing that you had mentioned when we spoke about a week ago too is that now whenever somebody joins the digital marketer team, they actually go through, or this is part of the plan, is they'll actually go through like community training, so that all future employees are onboarded knowing what the community is and why it's valuable. So it actually gets baked into the employee experience.
Right. So yeah, I mean, there's even like new people. I'm sure it wasn't a part of the official onboarding experience, but new people learn pretty quickly about the community and what it's about. But now, they have to go through all of our certifications when they join our company. And that's going to be, there's going to be some modules and some trainings about that as well. Mm-hmm. So that way, not only will they know about DM Engage and what it is, but they'll also know like basics of like how to like interact with people.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
It's really exciting. Yeah.
That's something that, I don't know if they still do it, but Moz used to run all of their employees through like, one of the people on the community team would teach training for every like new cohort that would come in. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, and they would actually have, I can't remember if this was Moz or a different company, where you actually have to spend time in the community as part of like your first few weeks at the company, so that you could get to know the customer, because it puts you closer to the customer development process, mm-hmm. which is good for any role. Because again, it's about the team and how you're solving customer problems at the end of the day. It's not about like, I'm building this community, I'm so important. Yeah, so yeah. Hopefully that answered your question, Frank. So we're gonna wrap up here. Like I said, this is recorded, and I will be emailing everybody who attended as well as those who could not make it today. Thank you, Susie, for your time.
Thank you.
Great to hear your story and to learn from you, and hear from the front lines what it's like, somebody doing it right. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.